Oh, this is Bob Christador. I'll just say hello to everybody. We're waiting for Wayne, and since this is Talk with Wayne, I assume most of your questions should be addressed to him. And then Russ Biagni is on. He's got an update from their trip in Idaho, right? You were near Boise, right?
Well, yeah, we are actually in an area that's east of Boise, out of a small community called Mountain Home. Mountain Home happens to be a site for a major Air Force base, and this particular ranch is north of there, in the foothills of the mountain range, and it's a canyon that comes out of what we know as the Danskin Mountains, that is quite remote. Interestingly enough, even though it's very close to the freeway, it's within, like Wayne said last time, what, 9 miles of the freeway. And it's something that you wouldn't expect to see, if you take into consideration the surrounding environment. But it's quite different. It's a basalt canyon that is formed by a stream that is fed not only by the groundwater and by the runoff of very small tributaries, but also by a lake called Crane Reservoir, actually a reservoir called Crane Reservoir, and Long Tom Reservoir, which are they are low-lying. They're not low-lying. I guess they're medium-lying reservoirs in the foothills of that mountain range. So it's kind of unique. Interestingly enough, this piece of property has been in this man's estate for a number of years. His father owned it, and at this site, it was actually a stage stop for what they call the Kelty Road. The Kelty Road was the name of the name of the stage stop was called Kelty. I'm guessing was named after the man who built it back in the 1800s. And it was a route that was taken along the Rimrock following the Boise River drainage system, which of course drains into Boise. And it comes off the basalt cliffs as you enter Boise Valley. Has an interesting structure that was hand built by the early pioneers in the side of the cliff, and it's actually hand laid basalt stone, hand laid into the side of a basalt cliff. If you can get your head around that, it drops a couple 100 feet in elevation at an angle that they could actually use with the oxen-driven and horse-driven wagons that they brought up and down. And it was actually built because it was the first reasonable spot that they could enter into Boise Valley. If they didn't do it there, they would have to go another 7 miles along the basalt cliffs to get down into the Boise Valley itself, the Boise floor. The reason that they went to that kind of expense in trying to build the ramp, actually, as I mentioned, it was the old Oregon Trail, or maybe I didn't, but it was part of the Oregon Trail, was that all of the early settlers and people that were coming to the Boise Valley in those days were going up to Idaho City, which was the site of a gold rush. And so they were not interested particularly in coming into Boise Valley. They were interested in going upstream the Boise River to the site called Idaho City because of the gold rush. And so they built that ramp as a way to cut off 7 additional miles. Well, it would be 14 miles, 7 one way and 7 back to go up towards Idaho City. So it'd actually be a 14-mile shortcut for them to build that ramp. So that's why they did it. I used to actually live at the base of that cliff, and you can still see the wagon tracks with the steel rims where they would put grooves into the basalt tracks, into the basalt slabs that they actually laid down on this ramp. You could actually see the tracks still that were gouged into the basalt itself. It's very interesting. Anyway, his ranch was the site of where that started, and so that's about across the desert, it's probably another 45 miles up to from the Boise site where the Kelty stage stop used to be. So it has a lot of history. It is one of the desert streams of Idaho that has red band trout. For those of you that aren't interested in trout species, that's a rather rare species of trout. It is particularly fond of warmer climates and warm water, and so it can actually live in the desert streams of Idaho and other states. You're not going to see it very often. I'm not sure there are very many red band trout outside of the state of Idaho, possibly eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, perhaps northern Nevada, and maybe parts of Arizona. That would probably be the extent of their range. I'm sure those of you who are out there that may have more information can correct me on that. But it's a rainbow species, but it's quite beautiful. Its markings are very distinct. And so it's unique in the fact that it has a very rare fish that lives in habitats at the stream called Canyon Creek, which this ranch lies on. So that's just a little bit of history. Wayne has been looking at this as an investment for some time now. And I just had lunch, just finished up lunch with the owner of the property, as I mentioned. So we'll see what happens. My guess is that we might we're a step or two closer to getting this deal done. So that's what's happening right there. Oh, I might say that during the winter months, this habitat that is along the banks of this particular stream on this ranch, well, you'll see elk, and you'll see deer, you'll see antelope, you'll see mountain lion, bear. Once in a while, moose will come through. So even though it's kind of close to the freeway in a way, it's not at all unusual to see these kinds of animals during the wintertime, especially when they migrate through there. So it makes it even more interesting, at least for guys like me that are fond of wild creatures and so forth. But there's really not any farming. All the farming out there would be the very most hay and dry farming. They're not. There's no crops that are particularly grown out there other than alfalfa hay, and there's really the groundwater there is kind of exciting. It's one of the other reasons that Wayne is interested in this property is that the water rights are very good for this property. The water is very pure. In fact, some of the purest water I think that I know of that comes out of the ground naturally. Has very little iron, hardly any sulfur, and also has another level of water table there that has warm water in the 120-degree range that has no sulfur in it, which is very unusual. And that's particularly exciting because there has no contaminants and very low in iron. And you can imagine the possibilities for more warm water agriculture and hydroponics would certainly be part of Wayne's interest in the interest of economics. So therein lies a little hint on why I'm sure that Wayne is interested in this particular property for a number of different reasons, mostly having to do with the future of the program of economics and Wayne's interest in it. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I am sure that if we put this together, we will be able to share with the audience some really neat videos and some from the Rim Rock and showing maybe some pictures of the wildlife that habitat the area. It is beautiful. This gentleman who owns the property actually owns a home, built a home. And it's very obscure. It's a very low-lying home. It fits right into the environment. It's a flat roof. It fits right into the environment, and the same coloration and the same design. And it's a southwestern style, obviously. And it single level, and it's quite beautiful. And it jets out right over his patio in the back, jets out right over the cliff. and he's kind of an interesting guy. He'll shoot skeet right off the back of his back porch, and have his dog fetch all kinds of blanks and stuff that he throws over there to watch the dogs work. And he's really into skeet shooting and into having, well, he has a lot of fun in his life. He's 86 years old and he's quite the guy. So I'm excited about it because I know the property pretty well. I fish on the property. I've hunted on the property. And some of the ideas that Wayne has shared with me about the property are not only exciting, they fit right into the program, some of the programming that Wayne's been talking about. So we'll see what happens. Anyway.
So what's the seller's motivation, and what's he going to do?
He's well, his wife is basically it's a family situation that he wants to take care of. He has a heart problem now. Like I mentioned, he's in his mid 80s, and his health is waning. So he has a problem there, and he wants to take care of his wife, who is getting up there in years. I think she's close to 80. And so what he wants to do is to take care of his family. And so he is really not utilizing the property. It's pretty much been just left to the wild. In other words, he's not farming it. He's not even grazing it. So he's just held it for all these years, and he just wants to cash his chips in, I guess, and make sure that he has a secure situation for his wife. Mm-hmm. That's his motivation. I don't think if he had a heart problem, I don't think he would sell it, but he does, and that's kind of brought it to the forefront.
Has he shared with you where he would go if he did sell?
Oh, he'll stay in the house. The house is separate from the land. In other words, it's set aside. It sits on its own 5 acres, and so it's at the south end of the property. Another interesting thing about the property from its unusual setting is that on all sides it's the boundaries are BLM land, so you have free access to government land from the property on all sides, and that's, in other words, it's almost landlocked in that regard. So it has a very, very unique relationship with the Forest Service and the BLM properties that are surrounding it, and it has a couple miles of stream bank right on this stream that I mentioned. So it's unique. It's unique.
That explains it. So, Mark, are there any questions that need to be answered? Besides, where is Wayne?
Well, I don't know of any, but I can say that last week, as you know, I should say not last week, this week, Monday and Tuesday, Wayne was here. We not only visited this property and visited the gentleman that owns the property, we visited several other properties in Boise Valley. And for those of you that are looking at Idaho for any reason, for travel or for investment purposes, Boise Valley particularly is, and that would include not only Boise City, but it would include Nampa and Caldwell, which are adjacent communities. They're not quite suburbs of Boise, but I'm guessing they will be one day because the city is growing west in their direction. And Wayne is looking at various investments for another company that he's a member of. So we were looking at a number of different properties in the Boise Valley. And just for those of you that, like I said, are thinking about coming to Boise, Boise Valley is growing at a pace that is just unimaginable. I've lived here my whole life. So I've lived here 78 years, and I can assure you I've never seen anything like it. Just to give you some idea, just the affordable housing market is 26,000 units behind the current demand 26,000, and that's a big number for a relatively small community. I would guess that there's not quite even 1 million people in Boise Valley, so that's a significant number. The construction that's going on is everywhere, not only in downtown Boise, but in the outlying areas, and not just for housing, but for all kinds of different building and investments. For example, Micron just got done building a 1 million square foot distribution center between Boise and Nampa, which is west of Boise. And, the reasons are obvious. People are growing weary of the large cities and some of the politics in some of the other states, I believe is one of the major causes of pushing people to Idaho. And certainly Idaho has a playground for those enthusiastic people that like skiing or they like water sports like river rafting, kayaking. Rock climbing is also a big sport in Idaho. So you have all kinds of outdoor activities which are just abundant in Idaho at every level, at the beginner level and to the extreme level. So if you want to, let's say, kayak some of the wildest whitewater in the country, Idaho is certainly a place you would visit. And if you want to climb some of the more challenging cliffs that you'll ever encounter, Idaho is one of those places you'd want to go. If you wanted to hunt elk and shoot and harvest a trophy elk, this would be one of those places you'd want to go. And if you wanted to catch trout, it's one of those places you'd want to go. If you want to do train dogs, it's got all kinds of open country, upland game birds, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite an interesting vacation area for people that are interested in visiting. For guys like me that grew up here, we just feel blessed that we had a chance while we were young enough to enjoy all of those things. I'm a kayaker, rafter, hunter, horseman. Never did get into rock climbing. I got into mountaineering, but certainly I was able to take advantage of all the things that are available in Idaho, and still do to the extent that is possible. For example, my wife and I, we spend at least 50 hours in the saddle riding the trails in Idaho. You have not only mountainous country with some very rigorous trails that are quite challenging, but you also have desert trails and desert canyons that are quite unbelievable. That you're just out, all of a sudden there's a hole in the ground that's 400 feet deep, and it's just amazing that there's a stream down there and that you can't even hardly get to it because it's so difficult to access. Places like that all over Idaho. So it's a playground.
What are winters like there?
Well, it's winter right now. We're having a pretty good winter, thank God. Our water table was getting low. We were having difficulty with some drought issues. But this year, our average snowpack is about 150% of normal in all the national forest drainage systems, including the Boise Payette, the Clearwater, Salmon, and the Snake River systems. Are all, and even in the desert systems, the Bruno and the Hawaii River, which are the major desert rivers in Southern Idaho, have over 100% of snowpack, which by comparison, last year at the time, we had weather the 70 degrees this year. We are, right now it's 30 degrees, so it's still, you go up the mountain a couple thousand feet until warm up there. You still have areas of Idaho, say like Stanley, that you can access because of all the avalanches. So you wouldn't be able to access it. Boise, you have to go way around to follow Arco to access to a little town called Stanley, Idaho. And it's just because all the roads closed due to avalanches. So we have a lot of snow. That's a little unusual. For the last 20 years, we've only had one snow winter that I recall that had kind of snow, and that was in 2017. But it's an unusual for Idaho. Down in D, not a shovel of snow very often. in the areas where most population habitat, whether it's Boise, Idaho, Twin Falls, or north in Portland, etc. Snow is not very heavy in the valley. If you had 6 inches of snow, considered a heavy snow in Boise Valley. But don't tell anybody that. I guess I just did. Skiing, by the way, is off the charts. I mean, it's just off the charts great. So.
What's summer like?
Hot. You have, you actually have 4 seasons in Idaho. As I mentioned earlier, by this time last year, we had 70-degree weather. It'll get there in about 10 days. And they will have a very pleasant spring. It'll range from the 50s to the mid 70s. And then by the time July rolls around, you'll see the temperature getting up into the hundreds. You'll have 10 to 15 days of degrees that are in the 100-degree range. You'll have another 10 or 15 days, maybe 20 days in the 95 plus range. But then by the time September rolls around, you're back into a very mild climate, very, very enjoyable. And so it goes from the 50s to 70s again, clear until November when the snow starts again. But you do have very distinct 4 different seasons in Idaho, especially in Boise Valley, that for my taste is quite enjoyable.
So the one thing that I've learned living in the desert is that it doesn't matter what the highs are, it matters what the lows are. So when you're having 95 plus days, what are your overnight lows like?
That's one thing that's very interesting about Boise. It has very comfortable temperatures when the sun goes down. And you actually have a twilight here. It's not like the Denver area where suddenly it's dark. You have very, very comfortable summer evenings. Very, very few times that you would actually be uncomfortably warm during the summer at night and have to have the air conditioning on, turned up. In fact, most of the cabins and most of the homes that are built in the resort towns, say like from Cascade, Idaho to McCall to Garden Valley to Riggins, Idaho to Grangeville, etc. None of those homes have air conditioning. They just don't need it. And so they have a very comfortable range at night. So you do have a pleasant evening in the Boise Valley and for most of Idaho. It does cool off at night. But it's the weather where the population is quite comfortable. Now I can't say too much what it's like up in the mountains because nobody lives up there because you really hit a lot of snow up there. And it, like I said, it's still there.
Well, I'm looking for a new place to go in the summers. I think Oregon has gotten a little bit too, how should we put it, crazy for my taste.
Well, I think that might be with a lot of folks. Oregon used to be nice, as you are aware, and as you may have heard in the news, Eastern Oregon wants to become part of Idaho. So that's kind of a political hot topic right now, and it's because of the political scene that's controlled by 3 or 4 counties on the west coast of Oregon, which alienates many of the people in the central part of Oregon east to the Idaho border. They think more, and the politics of the bulk of the land in Oregon is more like it is in Idaho. Very conservative, rural farming, ranching, etc.
Yeah, and I spent the last 2 summers, and I probably will part of this summer in Bandon, which is on the west coast, but southwest coast. And all those people are like amazed at how radical the politics are. But Portland and a couple of the other big cities kind of control the politics there because they get outvoted because there's not that many people in those rural places.
Well, they absolutely do control the politics, and you don't have to know too much about any metropolitan area you go to when you see all kinds of filth along the roadways, and you see all kinds of people camped you know, on the freeway mediums, or you see people along the fence lines, you know, I don't know what the solution is, but I can certainly tell you, every city that I've been to that has an overwhelming amount of homeless people are in these major cities that have a pretty liberal environment or government. And I don't want to get into a big discussion about that, other than to say, you know, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that something we're doing is not right. And these poor people are not getting apparently the help they need, and the politics doesn't seem to be helping the matter to any degree, because it's only getting worse. And you're right. There's scores and scores of people that are moving from places like Portland and like Seattle and like San Francisco because of the crime and the drugs and the liberal politics. And I'm not saying that everything about a liberal politician is bad or good. I'm just saying it's obvious to me it's not working. And it's not working for the people there, and they're leaving and they're coming to places like Idaho. Hopefully they won't come to Idaho to be like where they came from.
Right, exactly. That's the point. I mean, it happened in Colorado. Wayne can attest to that. And it's happening here in Arizona. I can attest to that. And it's just, I just don't understand why that continues to be a pattern, because it's not helpful.
Well, it's a huge topic, and it's obviously one that very great minds have been unable to solve. It has a diversion of opinions that are completely unlike anything that you could ever discuss, and the discussion goes all over the map. And we spend an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money arguing about something, and it seems like not enough work is being done, where you roll up your sleeves of your shirt and go to work to solve the problem. And I think it's getting worse in these cities. And from everything that I have personally seen in these cities, my son lives in Seattle. He's leaving. I can't even believe it. I can't, when I drive the freeways around Seattle, I can't even comprehend what I'm looking at. It didn't used to be like that. Same with Portland. And so something is wrong somewhere. And it's a social issue that is very complex. I don't think there's any simple solution, but whatever it is, we're not doing it.
Well, I can suggest some things, but most people won't enjoy my solution. I'm not getting my way anyway, so it doesn't much matter.
Well, yeah, I suppose we both could fall into that trap, couldn't we, Bob?
Yeah.
Anyway, but you know, for the people that are listening on this, I'm not sure they want to hear us ramble about that. The one thing I would like to address, there was a young lady that we were going down a rabbit trail yesterday about tying some of these fishing flies that I tie, some of these Atlantic salmon flies. I did not hear from that young lady about whether or not she wanted to get some advice on where to go to learn. I just remind her, if she's out there today listening, that I'm still ready to help her in any way I can, and give her as much history or some suggestions on how to get some history, art of Atlantic salmon, because it is an art form. It's not just tying a fishing fly that you're going to go use to catch a trout or something else, but it is truly an art form and has quite an interesting history. So I just like to add that as a comment. So
for some reason, I can't figure out how to see these questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I just add that, you know, I unless it went to my spam file, which it may have, I did check it, but I didn't see anything that I recognize as a question about Atlantic salmon fly tying. But I just thought I'd better say that, because I didn't want to give her the idea that I was ignoring her contact if she did make one. So what else was on the topic today? Do you know, Bob?
I don't really.
Well, I feel kind of embarrassed for our audience because I'm unclear. I will say that Wayne has some questions to me about cryptocurrency and crypto mining, and with the advent of Ethereum dropping or adopting their 2.0 program, which made it non-profitable for miners who are mining Ethereum, were no longer able to use their GPUs, their servers to mine Ethereum at a profit after the expenses and the electrical bills were paid. It was pretty profitable in Idaho because our electricity is has such a favorable rate. I think it's 6.9 cents per kilowatt hour, something like that. And so you can run a lot of equipment inexpensively by comparison to other states. And so it was a good mining opportunity, which I enjoyed for a couple of years. Was very profitable. I ended up selling all my units. No longer in the mining game, but I still invest somewhat in cryptocurrency. But I don't know if anybody has any questions about cryptocurrency. I can probably share with you on what not to do.
Well, I think we both probably can do that. So let's start there. What's the biggest thing not to do?
The pardon?
What's the biggest thing not to do?
Well, the biggest thing not to do is to overreact. You have to be prudent and you have to be timely in your investments, but that comes with an awful lot of research. Now, speaking for myself, I'm of a different vintage than probably most of the investors. And so just the terminology itself is something that I had to spend a lot of time learning. So I did spend an awful lot of time learning about cryptocurrency. And I joined an organization called Crypto Revolution. And it was 3 years ago. It was a group of young guys from San Diego that put it together. And I joined their organization as an effort to learn about cryptocurrency, and they had quite a good program. One of the earlier ones, in fact, at that time, certainly the earliest that I knew of. Well, it was actually 4 years ago, and they were really good, informed young men, and they were very, very fair, and they were very, very helpful for those of us that got on board early with their organization. Yeah, there was a fee, but they gave everything that they said they were going to give in the way of information. And if you followed the courses that they suggested that you follow, you could absolutely learn what you needed to learn to make wise investments in cryptocurrency. And I made some. And I enjoyed a very good run. I still have cryptocurrency. And I follow their advice. I still get their newsletter every day and their recommended things to buy and sell, and which come out weekly. And I still follow their advice. And all I can say is that it's such a huge industry all of a sudden. It's grown up right in front of our eyes. It's if you're from my vintage, you're not going to understand the terminology like a younger person would, or someone that has experience in computer technologies, which I do not. And for example, in my mining operation, I didn't even know how to turn the darn thing on, and nor did I want to know. I hired somebody to do it. And so my advice simply is this: take time to learn